Dust hung in the air of the auction house like a veil, catching the afternoon light that streamed through grimy windows. Men in weathered hats and worn boots crowded the space, their hungry eyes fixed on the wooden platform. There stood Nayeli, her wrists bound, chin raised in defiance despite the tears that threatened to fall. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the hall as bids climbed higher, each call bringing her closer to a life of servitude. Just as the gavel prepared to seal her fate, the doors crashed open. Standing there, silhouetted against the harsh desert sun, was Takoda, rifle raised and face set in stone. "She's my wife now," he declared, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Would his desperate gamble save them both, or condemn them to a shared grave? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 days earlier, the morning sun filtered through pine branches as Nayeli knelt beside a small stream. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, selecting the purple-flowered herbs growing along the water's edge. A woven basket, already half filled with medicinal plants, sat beside her. The silver pendant at her throat, a gift from her father before his passing, caught the light as she worked. The pendant was simple yet beautiful, a small turquoise stone set in hand-worked silver, passed down through generations of healers. It represented her position as the tribe's medicine woman, a responsibility she had shouldered since her 18th summer, 3 years ago. Birds ceased their singing, Nayeli's hands stilled, her senses alert to the sudden silence. Something approached. Setting aside her basket, she rose slowly, eyes scanning the forest. Perhaps just a deer or mountain lion, but animals rarely silenced all birds at once. The crack of a twig behind her came too late. A rough hand clamped over her mouth, while another secured her wrists. She kicked backward, connecting with a shin, earning a grunt of pain. 2 more men emerged from the underbrush, their faces weathered and cruel beneath wide-brimmed hats. "Got ourselves a wild one," the largest man chuckled, approaching with rope in hand. "Worth extra to Hargrove if they got spirit." Nayeli twisted violently, breaking free momentarily. She sprinted toward the stream, but a thrown bowler entangled her ankles. She fell hard, tasting dirt and blood as her chin struck the ground. The pendant snapped from her neck, disappearing into the undergrowth. "Careful with the merchandise," the leader warned, crouching to bind her wrists. "Colonel wants them unmarked." "What about the village?" asked the younger man, nervously checking the forest. "They find us, we're dead men. They're 3 miles east. Won't know she's missing till sundown." The leader hoisted Nayeli over his shoulder. "By then we'll be halfway to Santa Fe." Thrown into a cage on a wagon, Nayeli found herself among other captives, 2 young Apache men and an elderly Navajo woman. The old woman offered quiet words of comfort in broken Apache. The men sat in stoic silence, faces bruised from resistance. Through slats in the wooden cage, Nayeli watched her mountains recede into the distance. The pendant, her connection to her ancestors, lay abandoned by the stream. Without it, how would her spirit find its way home if she died in captivity? The thought tightened her throat, more than fear of what awaited them. As dusk fell, they reached a small trading post. The bounty hunters drank whiskey while their captives received meager portions of cornmeal, mush and brackish water. Nayeli refused food, focusing instead on the snippets of conversation from her captors. "Colonel's paying triple for the woman," the leader said, counting coins. "Says these Apache know plants that can cure his sickness." Thought he was just collecting for that rich fella back east, the one with the museum. "That too, but he's dying from what I hear. Doctors gave him 6 months. Figures these savages might know something white medicine don't." Nayeli committed every word to memory. Knowledge was power, perhaps her only advantage. She studied the lock on the cage, the patterns of the guards, the terrain around them. Even without her pendant, she was still a healer, still a daughter of Apache warriors. She would not be broken. Morning brought a new indignity. The bounty hunters sauced in cotton dresses for the women. "Put these on," the leader ordered. "No savage clothes at auction makes the buyers uneasy." The Navajo woman complied with downcast eyes. Nayeli refused until a rifle barrel pressed against her temple. As she changed, their captors watched with undisguised interest. She met their gaze unflinchingly, memorizing each face. If she survived, these men would someday answer for this shame. 2 more days of jarring travel brought them to a frontier town, bustling with activity. Signs announced an auction of authentic Indian artifacts and specimens. Nayeli's stomach turned. They weren't seen as people, merely curiosities to be bought and sold. As the wagon rolled toward a large wooden building, Nayeli caught sight of a lone Apache rider watching from a distant hill. Then he was gone, perhaps a spirit sent by her ancestors, perhaps a hallucination born of hope and exhaustion. Either way, she straightened her spine. Whatever came next, she would face it as her father's daughter. Takoda's knife sliced through the deer's hide with practiced efficiency. 3 days hunting in the high country had yielded enough meat to feed the village for a week. His weathered hands worked quickly as the afternoon sun began its descent behind the western peaks. The eagle feather tied in his hair, marking him as a scout and protector of the people, fluttered in the mountain breeze. He had earned the feather 5 summers ago, after tracking a band of raiders for 20 days before leading a war party to recover stolen horses. The tribal elders had presented it in ceremony, a rare honor for a man of mixed blood. Takoda's father had been Mexican, his mother Apache. Neither world fully claimed him, yet he had found his place as the tribe's most skilled tracker. Loading the last of the meat onto his pack horse, Takoda mounted and headed toward the village. Something tugged at his instincts, an uneasiness he couldn't place. He had learned long ago to trust such feelings. The village came into view as dusk gathered. Immediately he sensed the wrongness. Too much movement, voices raised in distress rather than evening conversation. He urged his horse faster. Elder Kichi met him at the edge of the settlement, face grave beneath his white hair. 4 are missing, Nayeli among them. The words hit Takoda like a physical blow. Raiders, white men. Hunters of people, not game. Kichi's mouth tightened. They took 2 young men from the South Ridge, the old woman gathering clay by the red rocks, and Nayeli from her healing place by the stream. The council fire burned high that night, illuminating concerned faces as voices argued over the proper response. Some counseled patience, others immediate pursuit. Takoda stood silent at the edge of the circle, listening. "These are not the first disappearances," said a warrior named Hans. 3 moons ago, the Navajo lost 5 people. Before that, the Ute reported similar thefts. Elder Kichi nodded. "They steal our people like wolves steal sheep. But unlike wolves, they do not hunt from hunger." "What then?" asked a young warrior. "For display," Takoda said quietly, drawing all eyes. "In the east, rich white men collect our weapons, our clothes, our ceremonies. Now they collect our people." Silence followed his words. Then Kichi spoke. "The tribal council has decided. We will send 10 warriors to the white authorities at Fort Defiance. They have promised protection under the new treaty." Takoda stepped forward. "By the time the Bluecoats act, our people will be gone forever." He looked around the circle. "I will track them. Alone, I can move faster." Whispers rippled through the gathering. Hanska rose. "You are a scout, not a warrior. And you are a warrior who cannot read white men's sign," Takoda replied evenly. "I have lived in both worlds. I know their ways, their language." Elder Kichi studied him. "Your skills are not questioned, Takoda, but this may be a journey from which you do not return. I made a promise to her father before he died." Takoda's voice remained steady despite the knot in his chest. "I will bring her home." Dawn found him already miles from the village, reading sign in the soft earth beside the stream where Nayeli had been taken. 3 men, one heavier than the others. Broken plants told of a struggle. Searching methodically, Takoda found what he sought. A small silver pendant on a broken leather cord, nearly hidden among fallen leaves. Nayeli's medicine pendant. He closed his fist around it, feeling its warmth. She would not have removed it willingly. Tracking became easier on the dry plains below the mountains. Wagon wheels left clear impressions, heading south towards Santa Fe. By midday, Takoda had reached a trading post where the wagon had stopped. The Mexican trader eyed Takoda warily until he placed a silver coin on the counter. A wagon passed. 3 white men, 4 Apache captives. "I seek them." The trader's expression softened slightly at the coin. "They stopped here 2 nights ago." The leader boasted of a special auction in San Miguel. Rich men coming from as far as Denver. "What kind of auction?" Takoda asked, though he already knew. "The kind decent men don't attend." The trader hesitated, then leaned closer. They spoke of a Colonel Hargrove, a big rancher with political connections. "He arranges these sales." Takoda placed another coin on the counter. "How long to reach San Miguel?" 2 days hard riding. The trader pocketed the coin. "The auction is tomorrow afternoon." Takoda turned to leave, but the trader called after him, "They will be heavily guarded, amigo. 1 man cannot fight so many." Takoda touched the eagle feather in his hair, then the pendant hidden in his shirt. "I do not fight as 1 man." He mounted his horse and rode south, pushing the animal harder than he liked. Time was now his enemy more than any white man. As night fell, he made a small fire and unwrapped Nayeli's pendant. In the flickering light, he studied its familiar design, the silver working he had watched her father create for her 18th birthday. Though never spoken of, what lay between them was understood by both. He had always thought there would be time. Now he prayed to the ancestors that he was not too late. Time seemed suspended in the auction house after Takoda's declaration. His rifle, a Winchester repeater, taken from a cavalry soldier years ago, remained steady in his hand. The weapon had seen him through countless dangers, its brass plate worn smooth from use. Unlike the ceremonial weapons of his people, this tool of the white man had become his reluctant companion in a changing world. "Lower that gun, Indian." The sheriff moved deliberately toward the center of the room, hand hovering near his holster. Gray-haired and heavy-set, he carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "This is a legal auction, with proper paperwork." Takoda didn't shift his aim. "There is no paper that makes owning people legal." Nayeli stood frozen on the auction block, her eyes wide with disbelief, and something else, hope perhaps, or fear of hope. Disappointed, the auctioneer beside her had gone pale, his gavel still raised mid-strike. "Now see here," the auctioneer stammered, finding his voice. "These are unclaimed indigents, not citizens. The territorial governor himself signed. She is claimed." Takoda interrupted. "By me, by our people." His gaze locked with Nayeli's. "Are you harmed?" She straightened, chin lifting slightly. "I am unbroken." Her voice carried quiet dignity despite the circumstances. The crowd's initial shock was dissolving into a more dangerous tension. Some men edged toward the door while others moved hands toward concealed weapons. Takoda tracked these movements without appearing to. He had counted 27 men when he entered, too many to fight, even if the odds hadn't been further worsened by the sheriff and his 2 deputies. "You mentioned a wife." The sheriff's tone was skeptical. "Got any proof of that claim?" "Our ways don't need your papers." Takoda shifted slightly, ensuring his back remained to the wall. "My warriors have this building surrounded. They wait for my signal." A murmur ran through the crowd. Heads turned involuntarily toward windows and doors. It was a bluff. Takoda had indeed come alone, but the town had heard enough stories of Apache raids to make the threat credible. "He's lying," called a voice from the back. "I ain't seen no Indians on my ride in." That, Takoda replied evenly, "is why we are still alive, and you are still taking our land." Nervous laughter rippled through some of the crowd, quickly silenced by the sheriff's glare. "This standoff ends now," the sheriff declared. "Put down the rifle, or we'll put you down." Takoda's finger tightened imperceptibly on the trigger. 7 shots in the Winchester. 3 lawmen, plus the most immediate threats in the crowd. Not enough, but perhaps enough to reach Nayeli before he fell. His eyes sought hers again, silently communicating intent. She gave a nearly imperceptible nod, tensing to move when he fired. "A moment, Sheriff." A new voice cut through the tension. All eyes turned to a tall, distinguished-looking man, rising from his seat in the front row. Gray-haired and bearded, he wore an expensive black suit that contrasted with the frontier clothing around him. A gold watch chain glinted across his vest. "Colonel Hargrove," the sheriff acknowledged, with a deference that told Takoda this was a man of significant influence. "This situation needn't end in bloodshed." Hargrove's voice carried the refined accent of an educated Easterner. "I believe I may have a solution that satisfies all parties." "With respect, Colonel," the sheriff said, "this Indian's threatening the peace with loaded firearms. Law's clear on how that ends." "Indeed, but consider the consequences." Hargrove stepped forward, seemingly unconcerned by Takoda's rifle. "If his claim about warriors is true, we risk bringing war to San Miguel. If false, we still have a messy situation that would require explanations to the territorial governor." Understanding passed between the men, confirming Takoda's suspicion that the auction operated in a gray area of legality at best. Hargrove turned to Takoda. "You claim this woman as your wife, yet you violated our laws by bringing weapons into town, threatening citizens, and disrupting legitimate commerce." "Your laws," Takoda replied, "not mine. Nevertheless, you're in our jurisdiction now." Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I propose a compromise, a contest perhaps, to settle this matter honorably." "What kind of contest?" Nayeli spoke for the first time, suspicion evident, a demonstration of the husband's commitment. Hargrove spread his hands. 3 trials of skill against our town champions. Success earns the woman's freedom. Failure." He paused, meaningfully. "And if I refuse?" Takoda asked. "Then the sheriff's earlier solution prevails." Hargrove gestured toward the lawman's holstered gun. "Your choice, of course." Takoda weighed his options. The standoff couldn't last. Eventually numbers would tell. The contest offered time at least. Time to plan, to observe, perhaps to find another way. "I accept your challenge," he said finally. "But she comes down from that platform now." Hargrove nodded to the auctioneer, who hesitantly gestured. Nayeli forward. She moved with deliberate dignity, her eyes never leaving Takoda's face. "Excellent," said Hargrove, as though concluding a business transaction. "Sheriff, please secure the Indian's weapon while we discuss terms." Colonel Hargrove's office occupied the entire 2nd floor of San Miguel's largest building. Through leaded glass windows, the afternoon light illuminated rich furnishings that seemed transported from an eastern mansion rather than assembled in a frontier town. A massive oak desk dominated the pace, covered with maps and documents. Behind it hung a framed parchment, the land grant that had made Hargrove the region's largest landowner. The document bore the territorial governor's elaborate signature and official seal, granting rights to 40,000 acres that had been Apache hunting grounds for generations. Its legal language transformed ancient homelands into unclaimed territories now properly settled for the advancement of civilization, words that had displaced entire communities with the stroke of a pen. Takoda stood before the desk, his Winchester now in the sheriff's possession. Nayeli stood beside him, close but not touching, her posture wary. 2 deputies flanked the door. "Please, sit." Hargrove gestured to leather chairs as he settled behind his desk. "We stand," Takoda replied. Hargrove smiled thinly. He opened an ornate wooden box, removed a cigar, and went through the ritual of lighting it. "I must say, your entrance today was quite dramatic. Effective, too. Most men in your position would be dead or in chains." "What do you want?" Nayeli asked direct. Hargrove regarded her with new interest. "She speaks English well, unusual for a savage." "The missionaries taught many things," she answered coldly, "including that only God may judge who is savage." The colonel laughed. "Spirited as well. I see why you've come for her." He turned to Takoda. "My proposition is simple. 3 contests against 3 champions of my choosing. Win 2 of 3, and she goes free with you. lose and you both become property of my household, though I assure you, your treatment will be humane. And if I refuse now, Takoda asked, the sheriff has evidence you threatened citizens with a firearm. That's a hanging offense in this territory. Hargrove tapped ash from his cigar. Of course I could intervene, but why would I? Takoda studied the man, recognizing the calculating intelligence behind the civil facade. You're enjoying this. I appreciate rare things, Hargrove corrected. Courage is rare, so is loyalty. You've displayed both, coming alone into hostile territory for her. He leaned forward. The contests begin tomorrow at noon. First marksmanship against our town champion, then horsemanship across the canyon trail. Finally, hand-to-hand combat with my foreman. What assurance do we have that you'll honor your word? Nayeli demanded. My public declaration before witnesses. My reputation means everything in this territory. Hargrove rose, indicating the meeting was concluding. Tonight you'll be housed separately in our jail. Comfortable enough, and safer than alternatives some of our citizens might prefer. The deputies moved forward to escort them out. One moment, Takoda said. I want to speak with her, alone. Hargrove considered this. 2 minutes, in the anteroom. He nodded to the deputies, who opened a side door. The small room contained only a writing desk and chair. When the door closed, Takoda finally allowed himself to reach for Nayeli, his hands gently grasping her shoulders. Are you truly unharmed? He asked softly in Apache. My body, yes, my spirit. She touched her throat where her pendant had been. They took everything, even my medicine dress. Not everything. Takoda reached inside his shirt and withdrew her silver pendant. I found this by the stream. Her eyes widened. She took it with trembling fingers, clutching it tightly. You tracked us from there? I would have followed you across every mountain. The words carried weight beyond their literal meaning. Nayeli studied his face. Why did you claim me as wife? We are not married. It was the only claim they might respect. He paused. Unless the thought dishonors you, no. Her answer came quickly, surprising them both. But these contests, they're designed for you to fail. The colonel doesn't intend to let either of us go. I know. Takoda spoke urgently, aware their time was short. Listen carefully. Whatever happens tomorrow, be ready to run. I'll create an opportunity. To where? Where days from the mountains, in territory crawling with soldiers and settlers, south. I have contacts among Mexican traders. If we reach them, the door opened. Time's up, announced the deputy, a young man with a shock of red hair beneath his hat. As they were led downstairs toward the jailhouse, Takoda noted everything, the number of armed men on the streets, the distance to the livery stable, where horses were kept, the location of the general store that might contain supplies. Every detail could matter for what would come. The jail consisted of 4 cells, 2 on each side of a narrow corridor. The sheriff personally locked Nayeli in one cell, Takoda in another, across the way. Get some rest, the sheriff advised without kindness. Tomorrow we'll test what you're made of. He extinguished all but one lamp and departed, leaving them in semi-darkness. Through the bars, Takoda could see Nayeli clutching her pendant, lips moving in silent prayer to ancestors. Despite everything, he felt a surge of something unexpected, hope. They were alive. They were close, and tomorrow would bring opportunities that tonight did not offer. Sleep, he called softly across the corridor. Tomorrow, we begin our journey home. Midnight had passed when the sound of the jailhouse door opening roused Nayeli from uneasy sleep. Colonel Hargrove entered alone, carrying a lamp and a leather-bound book. The light caught the gold embossing on its cover. Flora Medicinalis, Native Botanical Remedies of the Americas. The colonel approached her cell, setting the lamp on a small table. I apologize for the late hour, but I thought we might speak privately. His voice was soft, almost gentle. I've brought water and bread if you're hungry. Nayeli remained seated on her narrow cot, watching him warily. Across the corridor, Takoda's cell remained dark and silent. Either he slept deeply or was expertly feigning sleep. What do you want? She asked, direct. as before. Good. Hargrove pulled a chair close to the bars. I want to understand what you know. He tapped the book. About these. Nayeli glanced at the botanical volume. I know nothing of your books, but you know of plants, their properties, their healing capabilities. He opened the book, revealing detailed illustrations of herbs and flowers. You're a medicine woman of your tribe. The bounty hunters confirmed this. She said nothing, but her hand instinctively went to her pendant. That's a healer's symbol, isn't it? Hargrove nodded toward the silver piece. Similar designs appear in healing lodges across different tribes. Why do you care what I know? Nayeli asked finally. The colonel studied her for a long moment, then unbuttoned his collar and pulled it aside. In the lamplight, an angry red growth was visible on his neck, disappearing beneath his shirt. Because I'm dying. Despite herself, Nayeli leaned forward slightly. Her healer's instincts recognized the severity of what she saw. Eastern doctors gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago. Hargrove rebuttoned his collar. They've tried surgery, caustic medicines, even electrical treatments. Nothing helps. And you think Apache medicine can cure what your doctors cannot? I think survival belongs to those willing to explore all possibilities. He turned pages in the book until he found what he sought. This plant, your people call it snakeroot. I'm told it has properties that fight corrupted flesh. Nayeli recognized the illustration immediately. It can help some sicknesses, not all, but you could determine if it would help mine. She met his gaze directly. I would need to examine you properly, to know which medicines might work together. Exactly what I hoped to see her. Hargrove closed the book. This is why tomorrow's contest is merely theater. Regardless of the outcome, I intend for you to join my household, as my personal healer, not as a servant. And Takoda, if he wins, publicly you both go free. If he loses, officially he becomes property. Hargrove waved dismissively. But practically speaking, I have no use for him. Once you're established at my ranch, I could arrange for an opportunity for his escape. You expect me to trust this arrangement? Nayeli's voice hardened. To heal the man who buys and sells my people, I expect you to be practical. Your situation offers 2 paths. Hargrove leaned closer to the bar. Serve as my healer, with comfortable quarters, respect and eventually, perhaps, your freedom. Or face whatever fate befalls pretty Indian women in frontier towns. Your companion's contest performance won't change this reality. Nayeli stood, approaching the bars. You speak of respect while threatening me. Speak of reality. This territory's future belongs to men like me, not your dying tribe. His voice remained calm, reasonable. But I offer you a place in that future, a chance to preserve your knowledge, perhaps even to help your people through your position in my household. As your trophy medicine woman, the bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. As a valued practitioner of arts I respect, even if I don't understand them. Hargrove stood, collecting his book. Consider this, healing me would demonstrate the validity of indigenous medicine to the territory's most influential citizen. Think what that might mean for how your people are viewed. Before she could respond, he turned toward the door. Sleep well. Whatever tomorrow brings, your future lies with me, not with a half-breed scout who can't protect you from the changing world. After the colonel's departure, silence filled the jailhouse again. Nayeli sat in the darkness, turning her pendant between her fingers. Only when she was certain they were truly alone, did she whisper across the corridor, "Takoda, did you hear?" Every word. His voice came back, fully alert. He reveals much about himself. He's dying, she said. The growth I glimpsed, it's serious. Spreading inward. Does that change anything? She considered this. It explains his urgency, and perhaps offers leverage. Be careful, Takoda cautioned. Dying men are the most dangerous. They have nothing to lose, or the most desperate to bargain. Nayeli lay back on her cot, mind working. The colonel fears death more than he fears or hates us. That's useful. You're considering his offer? Surprise colored Takoda's whisper. I'm considering all paths that lead to our freedom. She closed her eyes. Sometimes the river must flow around the mountain it cannot move. From his cell, Takoda watched her silhouette in the faint moonlight, coming through the high window. The tactical wisdom in her words reminded him that she was not simply someone to rescue, but a formidable ally in their struggle to survive. "Rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow will require strength from both of us." Dawn broke over San Miguel with the tolling of the church bell. Takoda had been awake for hours, sitting cross-legged on the cell floor, eyes closed in meditation. Between his palms, he held a small object, a bone-handled knife with intricate carvings along the hilt. The blade was no longer than his middle finger, seemingly insignificant compared to the weapons that would decide today's contests. Yet this knife held power beyond its size. Given to him by his grandfather, it had been carried by 3 generations of warriors. The carvings told the story of his lineage, Apache symbols for strength, wisdom, and protection. When faced with challenges that seemed insurmountable, Takoda would focus on this connection to his ancestors, drawing resolve from their enduring spirit. The jailer's keys rattled in the lock. "Up and ready, Indian. Your big day's starting." Takoda slipped the knife into a hidden seam in his moccasin. He had surrendered his rifle and visible knife, but this small blade had remained concealed during his initial search. A final resort if all else failed. Across the corridor, Nayeli rose from her cot, smoothing her dress with dignity, despite the circumstances. Their eyes met briefly, no words needed between them now. The town square had been transformed overnight. Wooden bleachers surrounded a cleared area, already filling with spectators. A platform had been erected where Colonel Hargrove sat with other town dignitaries. Nearby, a table displayed 3 silver trophies, prizes for the day's champions. Takoda was led to the center of the square, while Nayeli was escorted to a chair beside the colonel's platform, a guard standing directly behind her. The message was clear: she was both prize and hostage. Sheriff Mills stepped forward, unrolling a parchment. "By the authority of the territorial governor, these proceedings are declared official and binding." His voice carried across the now silent crowd. 3 contests will determine the disposition of disputed property. The contests have been selected to reflect frontier virtues of skill, courage, and strength. Colonel Hargrove rose, addressing the gathered townspeople. "Today we witness a fair resolution to yesterday's disruption. Should our Apache visitor prevail in 2 of 3 challenges, he may depart with the woman he claims. Should he fail, both become lawful property of this territory." He gestured expansively. "Let the first contest begin." The marksmanship competition took place at the edge of town. 5 targets had been set up at increasing distances, the closest at 50 yards, the farthest nearly 300. Takoda's opponent was introduced as Marshal Cooper, a wiry man with a drooping mustache, who'd reportedly won shooting competitions throughout the territory. Takoda was given his Winchester back, though he noted they'd removed all but 5 rounds from the magazine. Cooper carried an ornate Sharps rifle with a telescopic sight, a weapon designed for precision at distances far exceeding standard firearms. "Gentlemen's rules," announced the judge. "Closest to center on each target. Best of 5 shots wins." Cooper shot first, his stance relaxed and confident. His first bullet struck just off center on the closest target. The crowd applauded appreciatively. Takoda stepped up, feeling the familiar weight of his rifle. He breathed deeply, becoming aware of the slight breeze from the west. His first shot hit dead center. Cooper's expression tightened. His second shot improved. A clean center hit. Takoda matched it precisely. The third target at 150 yards saw both men score perfect hits. At the fourth target over 200 yards, Cooper's shot struck slightly left of center. As Takoda raised his rifle, the breeze suddenly gusted. He adjusted minutely and fired. Another perfect hit. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Cooper conferred urgently with Colonel Hargrove before the final shot. Takoda caught fragments wasn't supposed to be this good. The final target stood at the extreme range of accurate shooting. Cooper took extra time, adjusting his sight carefully before firing. His shot landed within the inner ring, an excellent shot that drew appreciative applause. Takoda raised his rifle for the final time. As he sighted down the barrel, he noticed something odd. The target seemed to shift slightly. Looking more carefully, he realized someone had loosened the mounting, causing the target to move in the breeze. Decision time. He could protest, but that would appear as excuse-making. Instead, he adjusted his aim to compensate for the movement, timing his shot between gusts. He squeezed the trigger. The crowd fell silent as judges examined the final target. After a tense moment, the head judge raised Takoda's arm. The Apache wins the first contest. Scattered applause mixed with disappointed mutters. Takoda looked to Nayeli, whose slight smile contained both pride and warning. They both knew this unexpected victory would only make the next challenges more difficult. Colonel Hargrove approached, offering a handshake for the benefit of onlookers. "Impressive shooting," he said quietly. "Enjoy this small victory. The horseman you'll face this afternoon has never been defeated on the canyon course." Takoda accepted the handshake, matching the colonel's grip strength. "Perhaps today brings many firsts." Hargrove smiled thinly. "Perhaps, but remember you need 2 victories, and some contests can have unexpected complications." As he was led away for the midday break, Takoda caught sight of townspeople exchanging money bets being settled, new ones placed. His victory had disrupted expectations, creating both opportunity and danger. Some in the crowd now looked at him with grudging respect, others with increased hostility. He touched the hidden knife in his moccasin. 1 contest won. 2 paths remained ahead. Victory through their rules or escape on his terms. Either way, he would not leave San Miguel without Nayeli. Afternoon sun beat down on the gathering crowd at the edge of town where the second contest would begin. A treacherous riding course had been marked through the nearby canyon, a winding path of narrow ledges, steep descents, and natural obstacles that would challenge even the most skilled horseman. Flags marked the route, visible as tiny specks of color against the red rock wall. As Takoda was led toward the starting area, his gaze fell on a weathered notice board where wanted posters fluttered in the breeze. One poster stood out, newer than the others, its ink barely faded by the sun. The image showed a crude rendering of an Apache warrior, but it was the text that caught his attention. 500-rod reward for information leading to Apache settlements on northeastern territorial lands. At the bottom, smaller print detailed, "By order of Colonel Hargrove, authorized by Territorial Land Commission to clear designated settlement areas." The date was just 3 weeks earlier. Takoda committed every word to memory before being hurried past. The poster confirmed what he had suspected. Hargrove's interest went beyond Nayeli's healing knowledge or the auction profits. He was systematically targeting Apache communities throughout the region. At the starting line, Takoda found himself facing a compact, muscular Mexican vaquero, introduced as Diego Ramirez. The man wore elaborately tooled leather chaps and a confident smile that didn't reach his calculating eyes. "The rules are IFL," announced the judge. "First rider to complete the marked canyon course and return wins. No interference with the other rider is permitted." 2 horses were brought forward, a magnificent black stallion for Ramirez, and for Takoda, a skittish pinto mare that tossed her head nervously at every sound. "This one's green-broke at best," Takoda observed, running a hand along the mare's neck and feeling her trembling muscles. The sheriff shrugged. "It's what was available. Your opponent rides his own horse, you ride what we provide." Takoda approached the mare slowly, speaking soft Apache words while examining her more carefully. He checked her hooves, finding what he suspected, a small stone wedged into the right foreleg, causing discomfort. He removed it discreetly, then checked the saddle, loosening the cinch that had been deliberately over-tightened. "Riders ready," called the judge. Ramirez mounted his stallion with practiced grace. Takoda approached the mare differently, taking extra moments to establish trust before swinging aboard. He'd grown up breaking wild horses. This nervous mare was a challenge, but not impossible. Colonel Hargrove raised a pistol. Riders at the ready. Begin. The shot echoed across the canyon. Ramirez's stallion leaped forward, quickly gaining ground. Takoda held the mare back, focusing on building her confidence rather than forcing speed. The course ahead was dangerous enough without a panicked mount. The first section followed a dry creek bed, relatively straightforward riding. Ramirez maintained his lead, occasionally glancing back with a smirk. By the time they reached the canyon proper, he was nearly 100 yards ahead. Here the course narrowed dramatically, forcing riders onto a ledge barely wider than a horse's stance. Takoda noted how the flags had been placed to force the most precarious path possible, another element of the contest designed against him. Ahead, Ramirez slowed, picking his way carefully. Takoda watched the stallion's movements, noting where the footing seemed most secure. When his turn came to navigate the ledge, he guided the mare with gentle pressure from his legs rather than the reins, allowing her to find her own balance. Halfway through the canyon, they approached a water crossing. Ramirez was already on the far side, his lead seemingly insurmountable. As Takoda urged the mare into the shallow stream, he noticed something odd. Fresh tracks, showing multiple horses, had recently crossed here, yet this race supposedly featured a pristine, untraveled course. The answer came as they rounded the next bend. A massive boulder sat precariously on a ledge above, with 3 men stationed nearby, nearly invisible against the rock. They watched Ramirez pass safely beneath, then prepared to dislodge the boulder as Takoda approached. Takoda reacted instantly, pulling the mare sideways into a narrow crevice just as the boulder crashed down, missing them by inches. The mare whinnied in terror, but held her ground under his calming touch. The men above, realizing they'd failed, scrambled away. Takoda guided the mare back to the path, now partially blocked by debris. They picked their way through carefully, losing precious time. The sabotage confirmed what the wanted poster suggested. This contest was merely theater masking Hargrove's broader intention. Takoda wouldn't survive to threaten the colonel's plans for Apache lands. With this realization, Takoda's strategy shifted. Winning by their rules was impossible, which meant the time for escape had come sooner than planned. As they emerged from the canyon's far side, Takoda could see Ramirez already turning back toward the finish line, victory certain in his mind. Instead of following the marked course, Takoda veered sharply east, toward the town's far edge, where he had spotted the livery stables. Shouts of confusion rose behind him. The mare, sensing his decisiveness, responded with newfound energy. They thundered past surprised onlookers at the outskirts of the viewing area. Ahead, he glimpsed Nayeli being hurriedly escorted back toward town by 2 guards who had realized his intentions. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, an entire conversation contained in a glance. Takoda changed course again, now riding directly toward them. The guards drew their weapons, but hesitated, unwilling to shoot with townspeople potentially in the line of fire. That hesitation was all the opening Takoda needed. He spurred the mare to her maximum speed, closing the distance rapidly, the second contest forgotten, as the real battle for freedom began. Chaos erupted as Takoda charged toward Nayeli and her guards. Spectators scattered, shouting in alarm. The guards pushed Nayeli roughly behind them, drawing their pistols. Just as they took aim at the approaching rider, a glint of metal flashed in the sunlight. A deputy's badge pinned to the chest of a young man who suddenly stepped between them. "Hold your fire." The deputy's voice carried authority despite his youth. "There are civilians everywhere." The momentary confusion gave Takoda the opening he needed. He leaned low over the mare's neck, closing the final distance. As he passed the deputy, their eyes met briefly. The lawman's expression unreadable, but his intervention unmistakable. Takoda reached Nayeli, extending his arm as he had done countless times during village games. She responded instinctively, grasping his forearm as he swung her onto the horse behind him. The mare stumbled briefly under the sudden additional weight before finding her balance. "Stop them!" Colonel Hargrove's voice cut through the commotion. The sheriff and several armed men converged from different directions, effectively blocking the eastern route out of town. Takoda wheeled the mare around, seeking another escape path. The southern road remained clear, but led deeper into settled territory. The northern path returned to the canyon where ambushers likely still waited. West led into the heart of town, a maze of buildings and alleys. West, Nayeli whispered urgently against his back. The blacksmith, trusting her instinct, Takoda spurred the mare westward, weaving through startled onlookers. Behind them, pursuit mounted, thundering hoofbeats, growing louder as the sheriff's men gave chase. They galloped down the main street, past the auction house, where their ordeal had begun. Ahead stood the blacksmith shop, its large doors open to reveal the dimly lit interior. Without hesitation, Takoda guided the mare directly inside, ducking low to clear the entrance. Inside, a mountain of a man looked up from his anvil, seemingly unsurprised by their dramatic arrival. He calmly set down his hammer and moved toward the doors. "Down the back way," he said simply, closing the heavy wooden doors behind them and dropping a substantial beam into place. "They'll be here in moments." Takoda helped Nayeli dismount. "Why help us?" The blacksmith, grey-bearded with massive forearms covered in burn scars, gestured toward the rear of the shop. "Questions later. Go through the storeroom. Door leads to the alley. Take it to the end. Turn right. Third building is the Blue Dove Saloon. Ask for Sarah." Pounding began at the front doors. "Open up in the name of the Lord." "I'm working with hot metal," the blacksmith bellowed back. "Give a man a moment to make safe." His eyes returned to Takoda and Nayeli. "Go. Now." They hurried through the storeroom as instructed, emerging into a narrow alley between buildings. They had just reached its end when they heard the shop doors finally burst open behind them, followed by angry voices. Turning right as instructed, they moved quickly toward the saloon, trying to appear casual despite their racing hearts. The Blue Dove's weathered sign creaked gently in the afternoon breeze. Unlike the raucous establishments Takoda had glimpsed elsewhere in town, this place stood oddly quiet. They slipped inside, finding the saloon nearly empty in the late afternoon hours. A woman looked up from behind the bar, tall and striking, with copper hair streaked with silver and eyes that had seen their share of hardship. She assessed them instantly. "You'd be the Apache couple everyone's hunting." Her voice carried no judgment, merely observation. "Jacob sent you." "The blacksmith directed us here," Nayeli answered carefully, "to ask for Sarah. You found her." The woman set down the glass she'd been polishing. "Come." She lifted a section of the bar and led them to a staircase. "My private rooms are upstairs. You'll be safe there until nightfall." The room she brought them to was small but well appointed, with lace curtains and quality furnishings that seemed at odds with the modest saloon below. A painting hung beside the window, a talented rendering of the same woman 30 years younger, standing beside a distinguished officer in a cavalry uniform. Sarah noticed Takoda studying the portrait. "Ancient history," she said dismissively. "The young fool I was, and the man who taught me about the hollowness of promises." Shouts and the sound of searching men filtered up from the street below. Sarah moved to the window, peering carefully around the curtain. "They're going door to door. It won't be long before they reach us." "Why risk helping us?" Takoda asked, echoing his earlier question to the blacksmith. Sarah turned from the window, her expression hardening, "Because Hargrove deserves to lose something he wants." She glanced at Nayeli. "You're the healer he's so desperate to possess." Nayeli nodded. "He's dying, believes Apache medicine can save him, and the rest of you can disappear," Sarah said bitterly. 20 years he's been buying, selling, and removing anyone who interferes with his vision of civilization. She straightened her shoulders. "There are more of us than you might bite, people who've seen Hargrove's true nature and remember what he's built his empire upon." A sharp knock at the saloon door downstairs interrupted them. Sarah moved quickly to a cabinet, retrieving a loaded revolver. "Stay here. Make no sound." She tucked the weapon into the folds of her skirt and descended the stairs. Through the floor they heard muffled voices, Sarah's controlled responses to questioning, a man's insistent tone, footsteps moving around the saloon below. "They'll search the building," Takoda whispered, glancing around for another exit. Nayeli pointed to the ceiling. Look, above them, nearly invisible unless one knew to look, was the outline of a hatch leading to the roof. Takoda had just managed to reach it when footsteps sounded on the stairs. The door opened to reveal Sarah, followed by the young deputy with the badge, who had intervened earlier. The lawman's hand rested near his holster, his expression now resolved rather than conflicted. "This is Deputy John Greyhorse," Sarah announced. "And it seems we have more allies than I realized." Deputy John Greyhorse removed his hat, revealing straight black hair tied back at the nape of his neck. His features, now that Takoda studied them properly, showed clear signs of mixed heritage, high cheekbones and copper skin tone suggesting native ancestry despite his uniform. "My mother was Jikarilla Apache," he explained, noticing Takoda's assessment. "Taken as a ward by a white family after her village was relocated. She married my father, a local rancher, but never forgot where she came from." From his pocket, Greyhorse produced a pair of worn leather boxing gloves, placing them on the table. The gloves were old but well maintained, the leather cracked in places but still supple, the laces frayed but functional. "These belong to the man you're scheduled to fight tomorrow, if they catch you." He tapped the gloves. "Burke the Butcher Williams, former heavyweight boxer from Chicago, killed 2 men in the ring before authorities banned him. Now he works as Hargrove's enforcer." Sarah poured whiskey into 4 glasses. "Burke breaks people for the colonel, not just physically. The contest was always meant to end with these." Greyhorse continued. "Even if you'd somehow won the horsemanship competition, the hand-to-hand combat would have been your end. Burke doesn't fight to win, he fights to destroy." Nayeli examined the gloves with a healer's eye. "Blood," she noted, touching dark stains on the leather. "Never fully clean." "He's proud of it," Sarah said with disgust. "Keeps count of the men he's crippled." "The town's split," Greyhorse explained. "Many fear Hargrove but depend on his businesses. Others have suffered his methods and quietly resist. The blacksmith lost his land in a suspect deal. Sarah has her own history with the colonel." Sarah's face hardened. "That's not relevant now. What matters," Greyhorse continued, "is that your escape has forced Hargrove's hand. He's called for a town gathering at sundown. My guess is he'll declare the contest's forfeit and claim ownership of you both. Or he might insist the final contest proceed regardless," Sarah added, "with severe consequences for non-appearance." Takoda considered this. "Either way, we need to be gone before sundown." "Not possible," Greyhorse shook his head. "Every road is watched, and they're searching building by building. You'd be caught before you reached the town limits. Then we use their expectations against them." Takoda lifted one of the boxing gloves, testing its weight. "If Hargrove wants his spectacle, perhaps we should give him one." Nayeli grasped his meaning immediately. "You can't seriously consider facing this Burke. Not on their terms, no." Takoda turned to Greyhorse. "How many people in town would support us if given the chance?" "More than you'd think, especially after you bested their champion shooter fair and square. That earned respect." Greyhorse considered. "And the boulder incident during the race, several witnesses saw that. Word has spread about the cheating." Sarah leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "A public confrontation, but one where the truth is exposed." Takoda gestured to the deputy's badge on Greyhorse's chest. "The law might belong to Hargrove, but public opinion could turn against him. It's risky." Greyhorse warned. "Burke is genuinely dangerous." "All paths now carry risk," Takoda replied. "But facing Burke might create opportunities that running wouldn't." The discussion continued as a plan took shape, interrupted by Sarah's young assistant warning that another search party was approaching. They quickly moved to a hidden storage room behind a false wall in the pantry, a space once used for hiding contraband during Prohibition years. Hours later, the town bell rang, summoning citizens to the square. As predicted, Colonel Hargrove stood on the platform, addressing the gathered crowd with Sheriff Mills at his side. "The Apache contestant has forfeited by his dishonorable flight," Hargrove announced, his voice carrying across the square. "The territorial court's judgment is therefore entered against him." Murmurs ran through the crowd, some supportive, others questioning. However, Hargrove continued, in the interest of fairness, I offer one final opportunity. If the Apache returns and completes the third contest by sundown, our original agreement stands. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some calling it generous, others recognizing the emptiness of an offer made to a man being hunted. And should he fail to appear, Hargrove concluded, a bounty of $100 is offered for his capture alive. The woman is to be returned unharmed. As the crowd began to disperse, a voice called from the rear, I accept your challenge, Colonel. People turned, creating a path as Takoda walked steadily forward. He had discarded his leather vest and wore only loose cotton trousers and a simple shirt. His hair was tied back, his expression calm despite the gasps and pointed fingers of the onlookers. Hargrove's surprise quickly transformed into a satisfied smile. Bold of you to show yourself. Where is the woman? Safe, Takoda replied simply, stopping at the edge of the cleared fighting area. And not part of our discussion until after the contest. Burke the Butcher Williams stepped forward, a bull of a man with a shaved head and broken nose. His massive forearms were covered in tattoos, his knuckles scarred from countless fights. He grinned, revealing several missing teeth. Been looking forward to this, savage, Burke growled, cracking his knuckles. Been too long since I've had a real fight. The sheriff produced the boxing gloves, but Burke waved them away. Don't need 'em, unless the Indian's afraid of getting hurt. No gloves, Takoda agreed. Colonel Hargrove stepped to the edge of the platform. Traditional rules then. Fight continues until one man can no longer stand. No weapons, no interference. He raised his hand. Begin at my signal. Colonel Hargrove's hand fell, signaling the beginning of the final contest. Burke charged immediately, a human battering ram aimed at ending the fight with one devastating blow. Takoda sidestepped smoothly, allowing the larger man's momentum to carry him forward into empty air. The crowd roared as Burke stumbled, then spun with surprising agility for his size, his face darkened with anger at being made to look foolish. Stand and fight like a man, he growled. I fight like Apache, Takoda replied evenly, maintaining a balanced stance, hands open rather than fisted. Burke attacked again, this time more cautiously, throwing calculated punches that Takoda deflected rather than dodged. The impact of each block reverberated up Takoda's arms. Burke's strength was formidable, each blow potentially fight-ending if it landed cleanly. For several minutes they continued this dance. Burke attacking with increasing frustration, Takoda defending with precise movements that seemed to require minimal effort. The crowd's mood shifted gradually from bloodlust to something like appreciation for the unexpected display of skill. Quit dancing and fight. Someone shouted from the crowd. As if in response, Burke feinted left, then delivered a powerful right hook that caught Takoda on the shoulder, spinning him halfway around. Before he could recover his stance, Burke's massive arms wrapped around him from behind in a crushing bear hug. Got you now, Burke hissed in his ear, tightening his grip until Takoda's ribs creaked in protest. From his belt, Burke produced a small object that glinted in the late afternoon sun. A brass key, unremarkable except for its broken stem. The jailer's key to Takoda's cell, deliberately broken to appear unusable, but actually filed into a makeshift blade. Burke pressed it against Takoda's kidney, concealed from the crowd by their bodies. Colonel says you don't walk away from this, Burke whispered. Nothing in the rules against a little accident. In that moment, Takoda understood the full extent of Hargrove's deception. The contest had never been meant as anything but public theater preceding his elimination. Even victory would have ended with Burke's hidden weapon between his ribs, a tragic accident during a fair fight. With clarity born of desperation, Takoda stopped fighting against Burke's superior strength and instead dropped his full weight downward. The unexpected shift overbalanced them both. As they fell, Takoda twisted, redirecting their momentum so Burke hit the ground first, the impact loosening his grip just enough. Takoda rolled free, coming up in a crouch as Burke scrambled to his feet, the improvised weapon now visible in his hand. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd as the deception became apparent. He's armed, someone called out. The fighter's got a shiv. Sheriff Mills stepped forward. Hold now, No weapons allowed. Let them continue. Colonel Hargrove's command cut through the commotion. This Apache fought our soldiers with whatever came to hand. Let's see if he can handle frontier justice the same way. The crowd's reaction split, some cheering the escalation, others protesting the obvious violation of the stated rules. Burke lunged again, now openly slashing with the sharpened key. Takoda evaded narrowly, feeling the air disturbed by the makeshift blade as it passed inches from his face. He retreated, creating distance, searching for an advantage as Burke pressed forward relentlessly. His back hit something solid. He'd been maneuvered against the edge of the platform, where Hargrove stood. Burke grinned triumphantly, closing in for the final attack. In that crucial moment, Deputy Greyhorse's voice rang out. "Colonel Hargrove! Riders approaching from the east. Looks like Apache." Heads turned involuntarily, including Burke's, a momentary distraction that gave Takoda his opening. He dropped and swept Burke's legs, sending the larger man crashing to the ground. Before Burke could recover, Takoda delivered a precise strike to his temple, rendering him unconscious. Silence fell over the gathering as Takoda stood, breathing heavily but victorious. He faced Colonel Hargrove directly. "I have won your third contest. The agreement is fulfilled." Before Hargrove could respond, chaos erupted at the edge of the square. The blacksmith burst through the crowd, bleeding from a head wound. "They've taken her. The woman gone." Takoda's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Strangers, not the sheriff's men. They hit Sarah, took the Apache woman at gunpoint." The blacksmith pointed eastward, headed for the canyon road. Colonel Hargrove's expression showed genuine surprise, then calculation. "It seems we both have been betrayed. Apache, someone else now claims your prize." In the ensuing confusion, Takoda locked eyes with Deputy Greyhorse, who gave an imperceptible nod toward the livery stables, where horses stood ready. The deputy's warning about Apache riders had been a diversion, but the kidnapping was real and unexpected by both Takoda and Hargrove. A third party had entered their conflict, someone with their own agenda regarding Nayeli. The contests, the escape, the tentative alliance with townspeople, all now secondary to this new threat. Without waiting for further discussion, Takoda sprinted toward the stable. Behind him, Colonel Hargrove shouted orders. "Mills, take men and follow them. The woman is still my property by territorial law." As Takoda mounted the fastest horse he could find, a spirited bay stallion, Deputy Greyhorse appeared at his side, leading his own mount. "I know these canyons better than the sheriff's men. You'll need help. Who would take her?" Takoda asked as they galloped toward the eastern road. "Bounty hunters, maybe, or worse, claim jumpers who've heard about the Apache healer." Greyhorse's expression darkened. "There are men who make the colonel look honorable by comparison." The sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across their path. Time, always their enemy, now seemed to accelerate as they raced toward the canyon, following faint tracks that told the story of Nayeli's abduction. Takoda touched the hidden knife in his moccasin, his only weapon besides his wits. The final contest had been won, but the true fight was only beginning. Nayeli regained consciousness in gentle motion, the rhythmic swaying of a wagon beneath her. Her head throbbed where she'd been struck, and her wrists were bound with rough rope. Through half-closed eyes, she assessed her surroundings without alerting her captors that she was awake. 3 men rode alongside the wagon, rough-looking individuals with the measured features of those who lived hard lives outdoors. Not townspeople from San Miguel, nor the sheriff's deputies. Their conversation drifted back to her in fragments. "Colonel's place just ahead," said alive and unharmed. "Double the usual fee." As the wagon crested a hill, Nayeli glimpsed their destination. Spread across a verdant valley stood Colonel Hargrove's ranch, an estate more befitting a European lord than a frontier settler. A sprawling main house of stone and timber dominated the center, surrounded by outbuildings, corrals, and cultivated fields. A high wall encircled the immediate grounds, with armed men patrolling its perimeter. Her attention fixed on one structure, a glass building catching the late afternoon sun. A greenhouse. Even from this distance, she could see it contained plants, not native to this arid landscape. One of the men noticed her conscious state. "She's awake. Better tell the house." The wagon approached a large gate where guards stood at attention. One rider went ahead, speaking briefly with the men at the entrance. The gates swung open, and they proceeded up a well-maintained drive toward the main house. Waiting on the broad porch steps stood an elegant woman in her 50s, her silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her dress was expensive but practical, and a ring of keys hung at her waist, marking her as the housekeeper or similar authority. "Mrs. Abernathy," one of the men greeted her. "Package delivered as requested, 4 hours earlier than expected," the woman replied, her voice carrying a faint accent. "Nayeli couldn't place. The colonel is still in town. Situation got complicated." The man handed her a folded note. "Instructions from Harrison." Miss Abernathy read quickly, then tucked the paper into her pocket. "Bring her inside. The blue room is prepared." Nayeli was lifted from the wagon, her unsteadiness used as excuse to grip her arms painfully tight as they marched her up the steps. Inside, the house revealed unexpected luxury. Polished wooden floors, imported furniture, paintings in gilded frames, signs of wealth that seemed out of place in this remote territory. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, proceeding down a hallway to a blue wall-papered room with barred windows. Unlike the rest of the house, this space contained only simple furnishings: a bed, washstand, and chair. The door featured a substantial lock. "Remove her bindings," Mrs. Abernathy instructed once Nayeli was inside. "The colonel wants her presentable when he returns." As a man cut the ropes from her wrists, Nayeli noticed something unexpected. Hanging on the wall was a medicine pouch of unmistakable Apache design. Made from deer hide with distinctive beadwork, it was the type used by healers to carry sacred herbs and implements. Not a trophy or decoration, but positioned for practical use. When the men departed, Mrs. Abernathy remained, studying Nayeli with clinical detachment. "There is water to wash and clean clothes on the bed. The colonel will see you when he returns." "Why was I brought here?" Nayeli asked, rubbing her chafed wrists. "That is not my concern." The housekeeper's tone remained professional. "I manage the household. Questions about the colonel's business should be directed to him. And if I refuse to cooperate..." Mrs. Abernathy's expression didn't change. "Others have tried." The medicine pouch belonged to the last one. The revelation hung in the air between them. Nayeli was not the first healer brought to this place. "What happened to them?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. She was uncooperative. The housekeeper stated it as simple fact. A Navajo woman, stubborn to the end. The colonel's condition worsened while she withheld her knowledge. And now she feeds the garden soil. Mrs. Abernathy's matter-of-fact tone made the statement more chilling. "The colonel's patience is proportional to his suffering. Currently, both are considerable." After the housekeeper departed, Nayeli examined the room more carefully. The windows, though barred, provided a view of the greenhouse she'd spotted earlier. Moving closer, she could see people working inside, not ranch hands or laborers, but individuals in simple clothing that marked them as indigenous. Captives, like herself, but with some freedom of movement within the compound. The medicine pouch drew her attention again. She approached it cautiously, aware it might be some form of test. Inside, she found dried herbs, some she recognized, others unfamiliar, likely from tribes with different healing traditions. The pouch itself showed signs of expert craftsmanship, the beadwork telling the story of its original owner's lineage and power. Respectfully, she closed it and returned it to its place. The dead healer's spirit deserved better than having her sacred tools used as a warning to her success. As sunset painted the valley in golden light, Nayeli heard increased activity below, horses arriving, men's voices, doors opening and closing. Colonel Hargrove had returned, earlier than expected based on the household's reaction. Footsteps approached her door. Keys jingled as the lock turned. Nayeli straightened her spine and lifted her chin, determined to show no fear despite the fate of her predecessor. The door swung open to reveal Colonel Hargrove, still dusty from the road, his expression a complex mixture of anger and satisfaction. "Welcome to your new home," he said, stepping into the room. "We have much to discuss about your future here and the consequences of today's unfortunate events." Dusk settled over the landscape as Takoda and Deputy Greyhorse reined in their horses on a ridge overlooking Hargrove's Valley estate. They dismounted, approaching the edge cautiously to avoid silhouetting themselves against the darkening sky. From a weathered saddlebag, Greyhorse produced a folded piece of parchment, a hand-drawn map of the ranch and its surroundings. "This is 3 years old," the deputy warned, spreading the map on a flat rock. "Harrison Hargrove's head of security changes the patrol routes monthly, but the buildings remain the same." The map revealed details no casual observer could know: guard positions, outbuilding purposes, and most importantly a thin dotted line marking what appeared to be a secondary entrance on the property's western edge. "Where did you get this?" Takoda asked, studying the meticulous drawing. "Sarah." Greyhorse's expression darkened. She was familiar with the property once. Takoda traced the dotted line with his finger. "This entrance, an old mining tunnel from before Hargrove's time, connects to the wine cellar under the main house." Greyhorse pointed to small X marks along the tunnel route. "Support beams, tight spaces, not used for years, but Sarah claims it was never sealed." "And the main house? Where would they keep her?" "Second floor, east wing." Greyhorse indicated a section of the sprawling structure. "Hargrove keeps special guests there. Windows barred, doors locked." Takoda memorized every detail, calculating distances and timing. "Guards? At least 20 men on rotation. Most are former soldiers or hired guns." Greyhorse looked grim, and Harrison, former army scout, smart and ruthless. A distant thunder of hooves drew their attention. Through deepening shadows, they made out riders approaching the ranch from the direction of San Miguel, the sheriff and his posse, arriving later than expected. "Mills won't interfere directly with Hargrove's operation," Greyhorse observed, "but he'll want to ensure the territorial court's claim is enforced." "Meaning Nayeli stays the colonel's property," Takoda said bitterly. "Legally, yes." Greyhorse folded the map carefully. "But Hargrove violated his own contest rules. That might sway some opinions in town." "We need more than opinions." Takoda scanned the heavily guarded compound. "We need help." As if in answer, a whisper came from the darkness behind them. "You'll get yourself killed going in there alone." Both men spun, reaching for weapons. From the shadows emerged the blacksmith, leading 3 horses. Behind him followed Sarah from the Blue Dove Saloon, and a tall Mexican man. Takoda didn't recognize. "Jacob," Greyhorse acknowledged the blacksmith with evident relief. "Didn't expect to find you here," Sarah insisted. The blacksmith nodded toward the saloon owner. "Said you'd need more than 2 guns for what you're planning." Sarah stepped forward. "Hargrove's men left me with this." She touched a bruised cheek. "Consider my involvement personal now." The Mexican extended his hand to Takoda. "Miguel Vasquez, I supply the colonel's kitchen. My wagon enters the compound twice weekly without search." Takoda studied the unexpected allies. "Why risk yourselves for strangers?" "Not for strangers," the blacksmith replied. "For justice long overdue." Sarah nodded toward the ranch. That land was stolen from Miguel's family through forged deeds. Jacob lost his brother to Hargrove's enforcers. And me, she paused, her expression hardening. "Let's just say I have my reasons." "The Apache woman," Miguel added quietly. "She is not the first healer taken. My cousin's wife, Navajo medicine woman, disappeared last spring. We heard she died on the colonel's property." The group moved to a more sheltered position where a small fire could be safely lit. There, on flat ground, Sarah recreated the map in greater detail, adding information from Miguel about delivery schedules and the blacksmith knowledge of the building materials and potential weaknesses. "The colonel returned early," Miguel reported, "with the sheriff close behind. Something has them agitated." "The contest didn't end as planned," Greyhorse explained. Takoda was supposed to die, not win, and now Harrison's men have bypassed the entire charade by taking the woman directly. Sarah added, Hargrove won't be pleased with the public embarrassment, which makes timing critical, Takoda noted. If Hargrove feels cornered, Nayeli becomes more valuable, or more disposable. The rescue plan took shape gradually. Miguel would bring his supply wagon at dawn, with Takoda concealed among the goods. Sarah, whose past connection to Hargrove granted her knowledge of the house's interior, would create a distraction in town that would draw attention and possibly some of the ranch's security. The blacksmith would position himself near the stables with extra horses for their escape. Deputy Greyhorse presented the greatest risk, a lawman conspiring against the territory's most powerful citizen. I delay the sheriff's return to the ranch, he offered. Create confusion about jurisdictional issues that require his presence in town. As they finalized details, the weight of what they proposed settled over the group. Not just a rescue, but open defiance of the established order that Hargrove represented. There's something else you should know, Sarah said finally. She reached into her coat and withdrew a folded document. I took this from the saloon storeroom before leaving town. She handed it to Takoda. In the firelight he unfolded what appeared to be an official letter bearing the territorial governor's seal. It detailed plans for a military expedition against hostile Apache encampments in the northern mountains, precisely where Takoda's village was located. The date for the operation 3 days hence. Hargrove's been planning this for months, Sarah explained, using the capture of your people as intelligence gathering before the main assault. Takoda's blood ran cold as the full scope of Hargrove's scheme became clear. The contests, Nayeli's abduction, all were merely preludes to a larger campaign of removal and extermination. We're not just rescuing one woman, he said, passing the document to Greyhorse. We're racing to save an entire people. The deputy studied the orders, his face grim. These bear the governor's signature. This is sanctioned at the highest level. Then we need evidence of Hargrove's true methods, Takoda decided. Something that would force the governor to reconsider his support. Their eyes turned again to the distant ranch, now lit with lanterns against the night. What had begun as a personal mission had expanded into something far more consequential, a stand against policies that threatened not just individuals, but entire cultures. Colonel Hargrove's private study reflected the man himself, imposing, meticulously organized, and filled with artifacts of conquest. Native weapons and ceremonial items hung on walls between hunting trophies and military commendation. A massive oak desk dominated the center, covered with maps and correspondence bearing official seals. In one corner stood a glass display case containing a single plant, unusual in this context of martial trophies. The desert lily grew from rich black soil, its delicate white blossoms seeming out of place among implements of war and governance. Native to the highest mountain valleys, it normally bloomed only briefly after summer rains. Yet here it thrived out of season, carefully tended. Nayeli recognized it immediately. Carthinia in Apache, the ghost flower. Legend held that it grew only where ancestral spirits blessed the ground. In reality, it required precise conditions, rarely found outside its natural habitat. Its presence here revealed something unexpected about the colonel: patience, botanical knowledge, and genuine appreciation for the territory's natural treasures. Beautiful, isn't it? Hargrove noted her interest, while unbuttoning his collar. Took 3 years to create the proper soil mixture and humidity. Botanists from Harvard said it couldn't be cultivated. Yet you succeeded, Nayeli observed. Through study and respect for its nature, he gestured toward a chair. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Nayeli remained standing. I am not here voluntarily. Few educational experiences begin voluntarily. Hargrove removed his jacket, revealing the angry growth on his neck had spread visibly since their jail cell conversation. You've seen my condition. Your predecessor called it the eating sickness. Cancer, Nayeli corrected. White doctors have named it, but cannot cure it. Hargrove poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, offering one to Nayeli. When she declined, he set it aside without comment. I've consulted physicians in Denver, Chicago, even New York. Their treatments proved worse than the disease. And you believe Apache medicine offers what they cannot? I believe in exploring all possibilities. He touched the growth gingerly. Particularly when conventional wisdom fails. Nayeli studied him, seeing beyond the composed exterior to the pain he masked. As a healer, she recognized the signs, the slight tightness around his eyes, the careful way he held his shoulder to minimize pressure on the affected area. "Show me," she said finally. Surprise flickered across his face before he recovered his composure. He unbuttoned his shirt further, revealing the full extent of the disease, an angry mass extending from his neck across his shoulder and upper chest. Nayeli approached, her healer's instincts overriding her personal feelings toward the man. Her fingers moved with professional detachment, assessing the texture, temperature, and spread of the growth. "It began as a small lump 2 years ago," Hargrove explained. "The surgeons have cut it out twice. Each time it returns, larger and more aggressive. It has roots deep in your body now," Nayeli said. "Like the ghost flower, it requires specific conditions to thrive. Can you treat it?" Their eyes met, captor and captive, powerful and powerless, yet in this moment, their dynamic shifted. He needed her knowledge more than she needed his permission. "I can attempt treatment," she said carefully, "but I require access to your greenhouse and surrounding lands to gather proper medicines and assurance that my people will not be harmed." Hargrove moved to his desk, retrieving a folded document. "I anticipated negotiation. This order, signed yesterday, postpones the cavalry action against northern Apache territories for 30 days. Nayeli took the paper, reading the official language that temporarily reprieved her village. "A stay of execution, nothing more but valuable time nonetheless." "Your greenhouse," she continued. "The other indigenous people working there, specialists like yourself, experts in plants cultivation, traditional knowledge." His expression hardened slightly. "Valuable resources being preserved rather than lost to progress." "Prisoners," she corrected. "Residents with restricted movement," he countered smoothly. "Protected from a world that would destroy them and their knowledge." The rationalization of exploitation twisted into benevolence through careful language. Yet Nayeli sensed something genuine beneath his justification. This man truly believed he was preserving rather than stealing, collecting rather than imprisoning. "I require their assistance," she stated. "Freely given, not coerced. Acceptable, within security constraints." Hargrove returned to business. "When can treatment begin?" "Tonight. The moon is right." Nayeli gestured to the ghost flower. "I will need this plant as well. This specimen took years to cultivate." He protested. "Cancer has taken root in your body like this flower in foreign soil." Nayeli met his gaze directly. "Sometimes healing requires sacrifice." After a moment's consideration, Hargrove nodded. "Very well." As night fell, Nayeli worked in the greenhouse alongside 3 other indigenous healers, a Navajo elder, a young Pueblo woman, and a middle-aged Ute man. Initially wary of her as a newcomer, they gradually accepted her as she explained her intentions. "The Colonel believes we help him cultivate rare plants," the Navajo elder explained quietly while showing her their collection. "In truth, we preserve our knowledge here, recording it in ways that will outlast captivity." "And he doesn't realize?" Nayeli asked. "He sees what he expects to see, savages grateful for civilization's mercy." The elder's weathered face showed grim amusement. "Meanwhile, we maintain traditions that would otherwise be lost when our villages are destroyed." They worked through the night, preparing a complex treatment combining the ghost flower with 7 other plants. Nayeli directed but allowed each healer to contribute their knowledge, creating a medicine that bridged tribal boundaries. Shortly before dawn, she returned to the main house where Hargrove waited in his private chambers. The treatment would be painful, requiring application directly to the affected areas and a bitter tea taken internally. "This begins a process," she explained as she applied the first poultice. "Not a single cure. Nature's healing follows cycles like seasons." Hargrove gritted his teeth against the burning sensation. How will I know if it's working? The pain will worsen before improving, Nayeli replied honestly. Healing is rarely comfortable. As she worked, Nayeli maintained a calm exterior while her mind raced with calculations. The treatment was genuine. Her healer's oath demanded nothing less, but it also bought time and freedom of movement within the compound. Every moment in Hargrove's presence was an opportunity to learn his weaknesses, the ranch's rhythms and potential escape routes. The colonel watched her through pain-narrowed eyes. You're different from the others, brought here. They resisted, saw me only as enemy. I see you clearly, Nayeli replied, meeting his gaze. That doesn't mean I see you kindly. His unexpected laughter turned into a grimace of pain. Honesty, refreshing. He gestured to the window where dawn light was breaking. Perhaps there's hope for understanding between our worlds after all. Nayeli said nothing, continuing her work as the first light of morning illuminated the compound below. Unaware that hidden among the supply wagons now approaching the gates was her best hope for escape. Miguel's supply wagon rumbled through the main gate of Hargrove's estate, just as the morning sun crested the eastern mountains. Among crates of vegetables and sacks of flour, Takoda lay motionless beneath a canvas tarp. The guard at the entrance gave the wagon only a cursory inspection. Miguel had been delivering supplies for years, his presence a routine part of ranch operations. Morning, Eduardo. Miguel called to the guard with practiced casualness. Extra coffee today. The colonel's favorite. He'll need it, Eduardo replied. Been up all night with that new Indian healer. Miguel's eyebrows raised slightly. Valuable information passed unwittingly. Kitchen still in the same place. Where else would it be? The guard waved him through with a chuckle. The wagon proceeded slowly along the main drive before turning toward a side entrance, where kitchen deliveries were received. As they approached, Miguel whispered toward the hidden figure. Almost there. 5 men in the yard, 2 by the kitchen door. The wagon halted beside a loading platform. Miguel jumped down, exchanging greetings with the kitchen staff who emerged to help with the delivery. While crates were being unloaded, creating a flurry of activity, Takoda slipped from beneath the tarp and into the shadows between outbuildings. He wore a guard's uniform, dark blue with brass buttons, taken from the town's laundry the previous night. The outfit wasn't a perfect fit, but in the early morning light it provided enough legitimacy to avoid immediate suspicion. On the uniform's chest gleamed the crucial detail that completed his disguise, a brass guard badge bearing the Hargrove Ranch insignia. This small piece of metal represented authority within the compound. From a distance it transformed Takoda from intruder to insider, granting him precious moments to move unquestioned. The badge had been Sarah's contribution, a souvenir kept from her mysterious past connection to the estate. Just don't let anyone look too closely, she had warned, while pinning it to his borrowed uniform. Harrison knows every man under his command. Takoda moved with purpose along the edge of the main house, adopting the confident stride of someone with legitimate business. A group of laborers passed, nodding respectfully at the uniform, without looking at his face. 2 real guards stood at the front entrance, but Takoda had no intention of testing his disguise at close range. Instead, he circled toward the eastern wing where Grey Horse's information indicated Nayeli would be held. The building's architecture revealed its defensive nature. Limited access points, windows barred on the first and second floors, clear sight lines from guard position. Not a home so much as a fortress disguised as a gentleman's estate. Movement on the second floor caught his attention. Through a window he glimpsed Nayeli walking with another woman in traditional Navajo dress. They carried baskets of what appeared to be plants and dried herbs. More importantly, they moved unescorted, suggesting Nayeli had gained some degree of trust or freedom within the compound. As Takoda watched, a door opened on the eastern side of the house. Colonel Hargrove emerged, moving stiffly, one hand pressed against his neck. He spoke briefly with a guard before retreating inside. The guard immediately summoned 2 others, issuing orders that sent them hurrying toward the main gate. Increased activity not ideal for infiltration. Takoda needed to adapt his plan. The original strategy had assumed Nayeli would be under constant guard in a locked room. Her apparent freedom of movement created both opportunity and complication. A bell rang from the direction of the bunkhouse, signaling shift change for the guards. Perfect timing. Takoda fell in with a group of men heading toward the main house, maintaining enough distance to avoid conversation while appearing part of their unit. At the house's eastern entrance, the men divided to their assigned posts. Takoda confidently took position near a side door, nodding to a departing guard as if relieving him. The man hesitated briefly, perhaps trying to place the unfamiliar face, before shrugging and continuing on his way. Once alone, Takoda slipped inside. The corridor was empty, smelling of beeswax and leather, the sense of wealth and order. He moved silently, listening for approaching footsteps, while searching for stairs to the second floor. Voices from around a corner forced him to duck into an alcove behind a large potted plant. 2 house servants passed, discussing the morning's unusual activities. Colonel's condition improved overnight, Mrs. Abernathy says. Apache woman knows her medicines. Extra guards posted because of trouble in town. When they had gone, Takoda continued his search, eventually locating a servant's staircase at the rear of the house. He ascended quickly, emerging onto the second floor near what appeared to be guest quarters. The hallway stretched in both directions, doors closed and unnumbered. Which room held Nayeli, and where was she now? The glimpse through the window suggested she had some freedom to move about, possibly working with the colonel directly. Takoda needed to find her without alerting the entire household. A door opened ahead. Takoda straightened, assuming the rigid posture of a guard on duty. A gray-haired woman in housekeeper's attire emerged, carrying an empty tray. Her sharp eyes assessed him immediately. "You're not one of Harrison's regular men," she stated rather than asked. Takoda gambled on the truth, modified slightly. "New hire, ma'am, transferred from the South property yesterday." Her eyes narrowed. "Harrison didn't mention new personnel." "Emergency replacement, ma'am, after yesterday's events in town." She seemed to accept this, though suspicion lingered in her expression. "Well, make yourself useful. The colonel wants the Apache healer escorted to the greenhouse in 15 minutes. Wait here for her." She gestured to a door 3 rooms down. "Yes, ma'am." Takoda maintained his rigid posture until she disappeared down the main staircase at the end of the hall. Fortune had favored him beyond expectation. He moved to the indicated door, listening briefly before knocking firmly. "Escort for the greenhouse, ma'am." The door opened to reveal Nayeli, her expression carefully neutral until recognition flashed in her eyes. She covered her shock quickly, aware they might be observed. "You're early," she said evenly, though her hands trembled slightly as she gathered a small basket of implements. "Schedule change, ma'am." Takoda spoke formally, fighting the urge to grab her hand and run immediately. "If you're ready now." "I am." She stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. As they walked side by side toward the stairs, Takoda whispered, "Tonight, North Stable, midnight." Before she could respond, footsteps sounded at the end of the corridor. A man in a tailored black suit approached, hard-faced with calculating eyes that missed nothing. Harrison, the security chief, his gaze fixed on Takoda's badge, then his face, recognition and alarm registering simultaneously. "You!" Harrison's hand moved to his holstered pistol. The carefully constructed rescue plan collapsed in an instant as Takoda's disguise failed at the worst possible moment. Ag compressed to a single heartbeat as Harrison's hand moved toward his pistol. Takoda lunged forward, covering the distance between them in 2 swift strides. He collided with the security chief just as the gun cleared its holster, driving them both against the wall. The impact sent a decorative shield clattering to the floor, silver-plated with the Hargrove family crest, now spinning noisily on the hardwood. The fallen shield's metallic ringing seemed to stretch forever in the confined space of the hallway. Takoda grappled with Harrison, fighting for control of the weapon. Despite the security chief's age, perhaps 50, he possessed remarkable strength and training. This was no frontier brawler, but a professional combat veteran. "Nayeli, run!" Takoda managed between clenched teeth. Instead, she swung her medicine basket with precision, catching Harrison across the temple. The blow wasn't enough to render him unconscious, but created the momentary distraction Takoda needed. He twisted Harrison's wrist sharply, forcing the gun from his grip. It discharged. As it fell, the bullet splintering a doorframe. The gunshot would bring guards running within moments. Takoda delivered a sharp strike to Harrison's throat, temporarily cutting off his air and dropping him to his knees. He grabbed the fallen pistol and Nayeli's hand. "Now we run." They raced toward the servants' staircase, the original escape plan in ruins. Behind them, Harrison gasped for air, unable to call out but already recovering. The main staircase would be watched, the front entrance guarded. Their only hope lay in reaching the greenhouse, where Miguel waited, with the supply wagon. Halfway down the narrow stairs, they heard shouting from the main floor. The gunshot had indeed alerted the household. Takoda paused at the bottom of the staircase, listening to approaching footsteps from the main corridor. "This way," Nayeli whispered, pulling him toward a small door that appeared to lead to a pantry. Instead, it opened onto a narrow passage, clearly used by servants to move unobtrusively through the house. They hurried along its length, emerging in a bustling kitchen, where startled staff looked up from morning meal preparations. "Fire in the east wing," Takoda shouted. "The colonel orders immediate assistance." The resulting confusion gave them precious seconds to cross the kitchen and exit through the delivery door. Outside, the compound had erupted into activity, guards running toward the main house, while servants gathered in concerned clusters. Miguel's wagon was gone from its position by the kitchen, either departed or relocated. Their planned escape route had vanished. Takoda assessed their surroundings quickly, noting guard positions and potential cover. "The greenhouse," Nayeli suggested, pointing toward the glass structure at the far end of the formal garden. "Other indigenous people there. They might help." They moved as casually as possible, Takoda still in his guard uniform, Nayeli carrying her basket as if on a routine errand. They had covered half the distance when a shout came from the main house. There, the Apache and the woman, 3 guards broke away from the house, running toward them. Abandoning pretense, Takoda and Nayeli sprinted for the greenhouse. Behind them, more shouts joined the first, the alarm spreading throughout the compound. They reached the glass doors just as the first shots rang out, bullets shattering panes above their heads. Inside, 3 indigenous people, the healers Nayeli had worked with, looked up in alarm from their plant cultivation. "Harrison's men," Takoda explained quickly. "We need another way out." The Navajo elder pointed without hesitation to a rear door. "Through the propagation room and root cellar. Tunnel leads to the North Creek." No time for questions about how they knew of such an escape route. Takoda and Nayeli followed their directions, moving past rows of exotic plants and ceremonial herbs. The propagation room beyond held seedlings in various stages of development, the air humid and warm. A trapdoor in the floor revealed steep steps descending into darkness. They had just started down when the greenhouse door burst open behind them. Harrison's voice rising above the commotion. "Search every corner. They can't have disappeared." The Navajo elder stepped forward to intercept the guards, creating precious delay. The last Takoda saw before closing the trapdoor was the 3 healers forming a human barrier, their silent dignity momentarily confounding the armed men. The root cellar extended beneath the entire greenhouse, a cool, earthen-floored space lined with shelves of preserved specimens and botanical samples. At its far end, partially concealed behind storage crates, a crude tunnel had been excavated recently, judging by the fresh soil and primitive supports. "They've been digging this for months," Nayeli whispered in realization. Planning their own escape, the tunnel was barely wide enough for one person. They crawled through damp earth for what seemed an eternity, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. After perhaps 200 yards, they emerged into a dry creek bed sheltered by dense undergrowth. Takoda oriented himself quickly. "North property line can't be more than half a mile through those trees. If we reach it," the click of a revolver being cocked froze them in place. From behind a large boulder stepped Colonel Hargrove, pistol aimed steadily at Takoda's chest. Despite his illness, his hand remained remarkably steady. "An impressive attempt," the colonel said, his voice betraying only mild exertion. "But predictable. This escape route was discovered weeks ago." Two armed guards emerged from concealed positions in the surrounding vegetation. "I must say, I'm disappointed," Hargrove directed his comment to Nayeli. "Our arrangement seemed mutually beneficial. Your treatment showed genuine promise." "Imprisoning healers is not an arrangement," she replied evenly. "It's enslavement. A perspective question." The colonel gestured toward the main house with his free hand. "Shall we return to civilization and continue our discussion?" "No." The response came not from Takoda or Nayeli, but from behind Hargrove. Sarah stepped into view, her own pistol pressed against the colonel's back. Behind her, the blacksmith emerged from the trees, a shotgun trained on the guards. "Lower your weapons," Sarah ordered the guards. Slowly, Colonel Hargrove's expression reflected surprise, then recognition as he half turned to see her face. "Sarah Blackwood, it's been, what, 15 years? 17. Her voice carried decades of controlled anger. "Not long enough, Jonathan." The standoff held for several heartbeats. Colonel Hargrove's pistol trained on Takoda, Sarah's on the colonel, the blacksmith covering the guards. The only sounds were the distant shouts from the main compound and the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Colonel Hargrove broke the silence. "You always did have impeccable timing, Sarah." Despite the pistol at his back, his composure remained unshaken. "Come to avenge old grievances. Come to end this," she replied. "All of it." From her coat pocket, Sarah withdrew a folded document that appeared official, its edges worn as if frequently handled. The territorial letterhead was visible even from a distance, an official land deed with signatures, and multiple seals affixed to the bottom. "Recognize this?" She held it where Hargrove could see it without moving her pistol. "Took me years to find the original." The colonel's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Where did you get that? Your former lawyer became quite cooperative before he died." Sarah's voice remained steady. "Conscience weighs heavy in final moments." "That document is meaningless now," Hargrove said. "The territorial courts have recognized my claims for over 15 years. Based on forgeries," Sarah gestured toward the deed. "This proves the Vasquez family legally owned these lands. Your entire empire is built on fraud, Jonathan." The revelation hung in the air. Miguel stepped forward from the trees, his face a mixture of vindication and long-suppressed anger. "My grandfather's signature was forged on the transfer papers. He never sold to you." "Ancient history," Hargrove dismissed, though tension had crept into his voice. "No court would overturn established claims after so many years. Perhaps not for mere property disputes," came a new voice. Deputy Greyhorse emerged from the creek bed, badge gleaming on his chest. "That fraud combined with kidnapping, forced labor, and conspiracy against tribal territories, that might interest the federal authorities in Washington." Colonel Hargrove's calculated gaze swept the growing circle of opponents. "Quite the coalition you've assembled, Sarah. The vengeful former lover, the dispossessed Mexican, the half-breed lawman, and 2 Apaches." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "And what exactly do you hope to accomplish with this theatrical confrontation?" "Justice," Takoda answered, "and protection for our people." "Your people." Hargrove's tone hardened. "Savages who raid settlements and resist progress." "Do you know how many civilians have died at Apache hands? How many women and children? Do you know how many of our children have been taken?" Nayeli countered. "How many villages burned because they happened to sit on land you wanted?" The colonel's face flushed. "I've brought civilization to this territory. Order. Prosperity. For some," Sarah said, "built on the suffering of others." A distant shout from the direction of the main house interrupted the confrontation. Harrison had organized a search party. They had minutes at most before being discovered. "We need to move," the blacksmith warned, eyes scanning the surrounding trees. "You're surrounded, Jonathan," Sarah said urgently. "Harrison's men are loyal, but even they can't ignore federal charges. Sign a confession, admit what you've done, and you might avoid hanging." "A confession?" Hargrove laughed bitterly. "To what end?" "So you can claim this land, become the new colonial power, so the truth can be known." Sarah produced paper and pencil from her coat. "Write it, now. Before your men arrive, Indecision flickered across the colonel's face for perhaps the first time in decades. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, dogs barking now, voices calling to each other through the trees. Nayeli stepped forward, placing herself between Hargrove's pistol and Takoda. "Your cancer spreads quickly, Colonel. I've seen its progress. Without continued treatment, you have weeks, not months." Hargrove's free hand moved unconsciously to his neck. "Are you offering a bargain, healer?" "I'm stating facts." Her voice carried the authority of her profession. "Sign the confession, order your men to stand down, and I will continue your treatment. Refuse, and whether you escape this moment or not, the disease will claim you before summer's end." The colonel studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "You would heal the man who imprisoned you? Who threatened your people?" "I'm a healer before I am anything else," Nayeli replied simply. "But I heal on my terms, not yours." The approaching search party was close enough now that individual voices could be distinguished. Harrison calling orders, dogs straining at leashes, the crack of branches as men moved through undergrowth. Colonel Hargrove lowered his pistol slowly. What exactly would this confession say? "The truth," Sarah answered, "about the forged deeds, the forced labor, the planned operation against Apache villages." The colonel took the paper and pencil with his free hand. Using a nearby rock as a surface, he began to write. His handwriting, normally precise and controlled, showed the strain of his decision. When he finished, he handed the signed confession to Deputy Greyhorse. "This satisfies your requirements?" The deputy scanned the document quickly. "It's a start, enough to take to the territorial governor." "Then I suggest we move quickly," Hargrove said, a trace of his commanding presence returning. "My men will be here within minutes." "You're coming with us?" Sarah asked, surprise evident in her voice. "I'm a practical man, Sarah. Always have been." Hargrove tucked his pistol into his belt. "My position here is compromised. My health requires her continued treatment." He nodded toward Nayeli. "And perhaps there's some small part of me that remembers the idealistic young officer you once loved." Sarah's expression remained guarded. "Don't mistake necessity for forgiveness, Jonathan." "I never do." He turned toward the sound of approaching men. "I'll delay them. There's a horse trail beyond that ridge that leads to the territorial border. My authority ends there." Takoda exchanged glances with Nayeli, skepticism clear in both their expression. Could they trust this sudden reversal? "Why would you help us escape?" Takoda asked directly. Colonel Hargrove's hand went again to his neck, where the cancer lurked beneath his collar. "Because death clarifies priorities, Apache. And revenge, I've discovered, is a poor companion for final days." He looked at the confession in Greyhorse's hand. "That document ends one chapter of my life. Perhaps helping you begins another." The search party was nearly upon them. Without further discussion, the unlikely alliance moved toward the ridge Hargrove had indicated. The colonel remained behind, composing himself to confront his men with whatever explanation he had formulated. As they crested the ridge, Takoda looked back to see Hargrove speaking with Harrison, gesturing in the opposite direction from their actual escape route. Whether genuine change of heart or simply a calculated final gambit, the colonel was buying them precious time. Dawn broke over the northern mountains, painting the peaks in gold and amber, as Takoda's party crested the final ridge. After 5 days of hard travel, the familiar valley of his people came into view. Smoke from morning fires, rising in thin columns against the sky. The journey had been grueling, but largely uncontested. Colonel Hargrove's influence ended at the territorial border, and they had encountered no military patrols. As they paused to rest the horses, Nayeli unwrapped a bundle from her saddlebag, a woven blanket of exceptional craftsmanship. The wedding blanket had been a gift from the Navajo elder at the greenhouse, presented hurriedly during their escape. Its intricate pattern told a story of 2 rivers joining to form a stronger current, with symbols of healing and protection woven throughout. She said it was meant for a union of healing and strength. Nayeli explained, running her fingers across the fine weave. A marriage blanket passed through 4 generations of her family. Takoda touched the edge of the blanket reverently. A sacred gift, to be used in sacred purpose, she agreed, meeting his eyes with meaning that transcended words. Their companions, Deputy Greyhorse, Sarah, Miguel, and the blacksmith, tactfully busied themselves with the horses, allowing the moment its privacy. The journey had transformed them from unlikely allies into something resembling family, bonds forged through shared danger and purpose. The final descent into the valley took less than an hour. Their approach was noticed quickly. Scouts appeared on ridgelines, observing their progress, before racing ahead to alert the village. By the time they reached the outer perimeter, a welcoming party had assembled, cautious but not hostile, with Elder Kitchi at its center. The elder's weathered face showed subtle relief at seeing Takoda and Nayeli, though his eyes remained wary of their companions. "You return with strangers," he observed. "Friends," Takoda corrected, dismounting, "without whom we would not have returned at all." Formal introductions followed, each newcomer presented with their role in the rescue and their connection to the larger struggle. When Deputy Greyhorse produced Hargrove's signed confession, murmurs spread through the gathered tribe members. "This paper speaks of soldiers who would have come against us," Elder Kitchi said after hearing the translation. "Yet we see no sign of such threat. The operation was postponed, not cancelled." Deputy Greyhorse explained, "This document gives us leverage with territorial authorities, but not certainty." The village council convened immediately, meeting in the central lodge while the travelers were offered food and rest. Takoda and Nayeli presented everything they had learned. Hargrove's systematic exploitation of indigenous knowledge, the network of sympathizers in San Miguel, and the precarious political situation that still threatened Apache lands. The colonel's confession may delay military action, Takoda concluded, but lasting protection requires more. The deed Sarah recovered proves illegal seizure of the Vasquez lands. Nayeli added, similar methods were likely used against other tribes. Elder Kitchi considered this information carefully. "For generations we have met the white man's papers with resistance. Perhaps now we must use their papers against them." A plan emerged gradually. Deputy Greyhorse would travel to the territorial capital with the confession and land deed. Miguel would pursue legal recognition of his family's claim, creating precedent for other indigenous land disputes. The blacksmith and Sarah would return to San Miguel, maintaining the network of allies they had begun to assemble. Meanwhile, the Apache would prepare for multiple possibilities: continued diplomacy if Greyhorse's mission succeeded, strategic relocation if it failed. As the council concluded, Elder Kitchi made an unexpected announcement. "Tonight, we will hold ceremony for protection of our people, for healing divided spirits, and for union of two who have proven their courage." His eyes moved meaningfully between Takoda and Nayeli, who exchanged surprised glances. The elder smiled slightly. "The time for waiting has passed. New challenges approach that require new strength." That evening, as stars appeared in the darkening sky, the tribe gathered in sacred circle. At its center stood Takoda and Nayeli, the Navajo wedding blanket draped across their shoulders, binding them together beneath its protective embrace. The ceremony blended ancient tradition with acknowledgement of changing realities. Prayers were offered in Apache, Spanish, and English, languages of 3 worlds now irrevocably connected. Their non-Apache friends stood within the circle rather than as outsiders, accepted as participants rather than observers. When the ceremonial blessing concluded, Takoda and Nayeli stepped forward as husband and wife. The path ahead remained uncertain, but they would walk it together. Her knowledge of healing with his skills of protection, creating balance neither could achieve alone. 2 weeks later, word arrived from the territorial capital. Deputy Greyhorse had successfully presented the evidence to the governor, who, facing potential scandal, had rescinded the orders for military action against northern Apache territories. The confession had been quietly acknowledged, with Colonel Hargrove retaining his lands but relinquishing claims to additional territories. It was not total victory, but neither was it defeat. Instead, something more complex was emerging in the contested spaces between worlds. Miguel had begun the process of reclaiming his ancestral lands. Sarah and the blacksmith reported growing support in San Miguel for fair treatment of indigenous peoples. Seeds of change were taking root, though what would ultimately grow from them remained to be seen. The following spring, Colonel Hargrove arrived unannounced at the village boundary, accompanied only by a single aide. His condition had worsened despite Nayeli's medicines, the cancer's advance visible in his gaunt features. Following protocol, he awaited permission before approaching further. Takoda and Nayeli met him at the designated neutral ground, a meadow between territories. "I come seeking healing," Hargrove stated simply. And to deliver this, he handed them an official document, territorial recognition of Apache sovereignty over their current lands. "Not everything you deserve, but what I could accomplish." Nayeli studied his face, seeing the pain he endeavored to hide. "The treatment I provided, you've continued it, as directed." His attempt at a smile revealed how much effort even that small gesture required, though I suspect some elements were intentionally omitted. "No," she replied honestly, "but healing requires more than medicine. It requires change within as well as without." That evening, after considerable debate among tribal elders, Colonel Hargrove was permitted to establish a small camp at the village edge. There, over the weeks that followed, Nayeli provided treatment, while Takoda maintained vigilant watch. Other healers joined her efforts, contributing knowledge from different traditions to combat the colonel's advancing disease. By midsummer, a remarkable scene had manifested. Former enemies sitting in council, the colonel's military experience now focused on strategies for peaceful coexistence rather than conquest. When he finally departed, thinner but temporarily stabilized, something fundamental had shifted in the relationship between opposing worlds. As autumn painted the mountains in brilliant color, Takoda and Nayeli established a new purpose. At the border between territories, they created a place of learning and healing, a school where children from indigenous tribes and settler communities studied side by side, learning each other's languages, medicines, and ways of understanding the world. The wedding blanket, now framed and hung in their teaching lodge, reminded all who entered of the strength found in joining different traditions. Though challenges remained and old wounds healed slowly, they had planted seeds of understanding that would grow long after their own journey ended, a legacy more enduring than conquest or resistance alone could achieve.